After 100 cruel whips for infertility, a poor farmer reveals an unexpected life-changing secret. Jacob stared out over the cornfields under the sprawling Midwestern sky, the sun hanging low, pouring gold across the land he had dedicated his life to nurturing. Each inch of soil echoed the whispers of his ancestors, who had worked this land long before him. But silence filled the space where laughter once thrived, a hollow reminder of dreams unfulfilled. For years, he and Sarah had longed to hear the patter of small feet running through the fields, only to be met with bitter disappointment month after month. The burden of their infertility sat heavy. It was the sorrowful topic of whispered judgments in the small town, a cruel stain on their perfect facade. Every sunrise brought the same ache in Jacob's heart. The romanticism of farming faded into an unbearable throbbing as the community saw him as the ultimate provider, yet he felt like an outright failure. On quiet nights, with only the sound of wind rustling the corn, he and Sarah would huddle together in their empty home, the chasm of longing yawning wider each time they embraced. Eventually, the weight of their emotions erupted in a heated argument that sent Sarah packing to her mother's house. Jacob was left alone, each corner of their home shouting reminders of joy, her laughter, their shared dreams. He felt the walls closing in, a suffocating reminder of his solitude. But fate had a surprise waiting for him. Joe, their elderly neighbor, knocked on the door, his lined face reflecting a lifetime of weather and loss. "You ever tended to a field alone, Jacob?" Joe asked, his head tilted as he stepped into the fading light. With a nod, Jacob played along, hoping to escape the gnawing despair. As they worked side by side, Joe shared stories of resilience, of love found in vulnerability and strength hidden in heartache. Those conversations brought a glimmer of clarity amid the emotional storm ravaging Jacob's mind. One storm-laden evening, while sifting through the dusty barn, Jacob stumbled upon a forgotten chest, his grandfather's legacy. The musty air was filled with nostalgia. Inside, he discovered dried herbs and handwritten notes full of hope, a remedy from generations past that promised to enhance fertility. The world spun as hope pricked at his heart, a tiny ember igniting amidst despair. Sarah returned after a week, her eyes carrying a storm of emotions: hurt, anger, love, and fear. The air crackled as they confronted the raw truth of their struggles. Was it truly worth seeking out Joseph's remedy, a lifeline cast into troubled waters? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Community gossip swirled like smoke, with opinions forced upon them, their pain dissected like livestock at auction. At a town meeting, Jacob stood tall, heart pounding, the collective judgment from old friends and neighbors pressing down like a heavy yoke. They needed to confront the idea of hope amid fractured dreams. As he opened his mouth to speak, silence fell like a thick fog. Would the revelation of this forgotten remedy stitch their wounds or further unravel the fragile threads of their love? A single question lingered in the air, heavy with uncertainty, echoing the heartbeat of their struggle. Jacob took a deep breath, fighting against the mounting pressure. The townsfolk watched with varying expressions: curiosity, skepticism, pity. He could feel their eyes boring into him, expectations laid bare. The gentle whisper of corn rustled around him, a refreshing reminder of resilience. He thought of Sarah, the pain in her eyes, and how desperately they both wanted this to work. "It's not easy for us," he began, his voice wavering. "But I believe we can try something different." He fumbled with the tattered notes, the edges soft from years of handling. "My grandfather once wrote about a remedy." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A mix of whispers and laughter, reinforced by the bitter taste of doubt. Jacob swallowed hard, remembering Joe's stories, how hope thrived where logic failed. "This could be our chance," he pressed on. "What if this could help us, help Sarah? Or maybe even someone else struggling with the same pain?" As Jacob spoke, Sarah stood at the back, her heart pounding. He looked so vulnerable, raw against the backdrop of the town's judgment. She wanted to support him, stand by him. But uncertainty gnawed at her mind. What if this didn't work? What if it only magnified their grief? She stepped forward, her voice breaking through the murmurs. And what if it does work? She asked, surprising herself. The crowd fell silent again, all eyes on her. What's worse, changing our lives for the better or living in fear of failure? A spark ignited in Jacob's chest. He watched her step into the light, courage shining through the storm swirling in her heart. The town felt smaller in that moment, and their worries less significant when faced with the fire of possibility. This wasn't just about them anymore, it was about hope echoed in the lives of others. Together, Jacob said, transforming uncertainty into conviction as he took Sarah's hand. We can do this together. Reactions swirled around them, from encouragement to skepticism. It was enough to make their heads spin. But amidst the clamor, they took comfort in each other. Maybe they were onto something special. As days turned into weeks, Jacob and Sarah embraced the old remedy, carefully preparing it with the reverence of a ritual. Their kitchen transformed, every scent and sound wrapped in promise. Jacob pored over his grandfather's notes while Sarah snipped herbs, their rhythm soothing away the distance that had formed between them. Sharing this journey felt like a rebirth, a rekindling of connection that had waned under details of disappointment. Each moment spent together ignited flickers of laughter and playful banter, but anxiety still lurked in the corners of their minds. What if this didn't work? One vibrant Sunday morning, Sarah woke up feeling different. Had their hopeful preparation paid off? Breathing deeply, she moved to Jacob's side, still sound asleep. She kissed him softly, a silent prayer on her lips as she held the news close, the morning sun wrapping around her like a warm blanket. Jacob, she whispered, I think something is happening, something good. He stirred, eyes slowly opening. Confusion clouded his face, quickly shifting to concern as Sarah clenched her fists, excitement bubbling over with uncertainty. What do you mean? He asked, his heart quickening, but before she could answer, a loud crash broke the tranquility of the morning. Startled, they rushed to the window, their hearts racing. A fierce storm had rolled in unexpectedly, dark clouds brewing ominously above their fields. As the wind howled, a realization struck Jacob like lightning. Would this be the storm that swept away every hope they clung to? What would they face together in the aftermath of this chaos? As the storm raged on, they held their breaths, hearts beating in sync as they awaited the uncertainty that lay ahead. What would the next morning hold for them, once the tempest settled? The wind howled outside like a beast, relentless and unforgiving. Jacob and Sarah stood by the window, their anxieties merging with the chaos flowing just beyond the glass. The thunder cracked like the sky was splitting open, and each lightning flash illuminated their faces, momentarily illuminating the worry etched in their features. Do you think it'll damage the crops? Jacob's voice was a tight whisper, the farmer's instinct kicking in. His mind raced, months of hard work were at stake, not to mention their fragile hopes. I don't know, Sarah replied, but her tone lacked conviction. But we can't let those fears cloud our minds right now. We have to focus on us. Her words trailed off, slipping into the impending storm. Outside, the winds whipped the trees, threatening to uproot everything in their path. Yet inside, the small warmth of their kitchen felt like a sanctuary against the tumult. The preparations, the hopes they had crafted, still lingered in the air, vibrant with promise. Even as the storm challenged everything they believed, they settled onto the couch, close enough to share heat but wrapped in thoughts that felt worlds apart. Sarah clutched Jacob's knee, her fingers trembling ever so slightly. What if we're wrong? She finally dared to ask. What if this is all for nothing? Then we'll try again, Jacob replied, his voice steady despite the turbulence around them. But I'd rather try than not do anything at all. You know that. Silence enveloped them. Sarah could feel her heart racing against the backdrop of rumbling thunder, while doubt continued to claw at her mind. Then, she remembered the feeling, the warmth of their kitchen, the smiles they had shared while preparing the remedy, all those tiny moments piled into something more. "Do you really believe it can work?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Jacob shifted, meeting her gaze head-on, those deep pools of sincerity and hope making her heart flutter. "I do, at least I want to," he replied. "But we have to believe together." She thought about the people they could help. The love and loss they had faced as they journeyed through this together. It was not just about them anymore. It was about a community that had suffered in silence, a chance to break cycles of disappointment and transform their pain into something beautiful. A sudden gust of wind slammed against the house, and Sarah jumped, her breath catching. Jacob wrapped his arm around her shoulders. "It'll all be okay," he murmured, as if he were reassuring not just her, but himself as well. "We've made it this far. We'll face anything that comes." As the storm pressed on, the anticipation grew heavier, as if the air itself was thick with questions. The very environment around them was in conflict, mirroring their internal struggles. Finally, just as the storm seemed to reach its peak, it paused, the tension hanging in the air. Then came a rippling vibration, followed by a quiet so profound it was almost alarming. The world seemed to hold its breath, just like they were holding each other tighter. They realized that amidst the raging storm, hope flourished, even in uncertainty. The false calm lingered for a heartbeat longer, and then the rain began to fall, a single drop followed by a chorus. Sarah turned to Jacob, her eyes wide. What if this changes everything? What if we wake up tomorrow, and it's different?" Jacob felt her words resonate deep within him. "But what if it doesn't?" he asked, pain flashing across his features. Before she could answer, a loud crash echoed from outside, shaking the walls as the storm's fury was unleashed again. They both jumped and looked at one another, breath caught between the question of whether to hope or to brace for more disappointment. In that moment of fear and hope, they realized they stood on the precipice of change. Outside, the chaos raged onward, while inside, their hearts beat with unyielding rhythm. Would the storm bring them devastation, or would dawn reveal something they had long yearned for? What awaited them when the new day finally broke? The storm settled into a relentless patter against the roof, each drop a heavy reminder of the chaos outside. Jacob and Sarah stayed nestled together on the couch, hearts beating in sync, but deep within them lay a tempest of uncertainty. As flashes of lightning illuminated their small space, Sarah's mind tumbled through memories, laughter with friends, whispers shared over meals, and the weighty conversations about their dreams of starting a family. Anxiety curled back into her thoughts. What if all this preparation is still not enough? She asked, voice shaking slightly. Jacob turned to her, his brow furrowed in concern. "We've been through every trial imaginable, Sarah. We can't stop now." His words pulsed with conviction, but even he felt a chink in his armor. Rain flowed steadily, a calming contrast to the visceral storm that rattled their home. Finding solace in their routine, they pored over their plans, envisioning how their lives would unfold after the remedy. They spoke of community gardens and revitalized hope, the joy that would outshine their struggles, but Jacob couldn't shake the ominous feeling thrumming beneath his confidence. Each time he closed his eyes, he saw the disheartened faces in town, the mothers who had lost hope, and the longing that filled the air heavier than the storm outside. "Hey," he said softly, pulling her closer, grounding himself in her presence. "Let us think about what happens next. What would you want to do tomorrow if everything goes our way?" Sarah smiled through the apprehension, her eyes sparkling with a hint of mischief. "Make breakfast like we did that Sunday. Pancakes with berries. You'll need to help flip them or we might end up with a pancake disaster." "Deal," Jacob chuckled. Then, he grew serious again, whispering, "And then we take that remedy to the town hall. Together." She nodded, heart swelling a little as the impending sense of failure eased, if only for a moment, but then, the storm regained its intensity. Another crash resounded outside, sending them both staring at each other, breath held. The rumble of thunder felt like a warning. Jacob stood, peering out the window, scanning the darkness, the storm light illuminating the chaos. "Should I check on the barn?" he asked. There was a flicker of worry in his eyes, and Sarah felt a knot tighten in her stomach. "Don't go alone," she urged, rising from the couch. "I'll come with you." Together, they stepped into the storm's grasp, rain drenching their coats, thunder rolling overhead, wind slicing through the air. Each moment, the sound of nature's fury fueled their racing hearts. They stumbled to the barn, where shadows danced in erratic patterns, and Sarah's grip on Jacob's arm tightened. As they pushed the heavy door open, it creaked ominously, revealing their sanctuary transformed into a different world, dark and chaotic. Jacob peered past the threshold, finding what looked like a fallen beam. Chaos reigned inside. And then he noticed something glimmering beneath the debris. "What is that?" Jacob breathed. "Let us find out," Sarah replied, an urgency pushing her forward. As they moved closer, the wind howled around them, as if nature itself was warning them, urging them back. But curiosity drew them in. Jacob reached down to uncover what lay beneath the fallen wood. Just as he did, a spark of light flashed from it, bathing the barn in a brilliant glow. Both of them froze, eyes wide and breathless. Could this be a sign? Or something more ominous lurking just beneath the surface? What would they uncover together, pulsing with hope and uncertainty as the storm raged on around them? Sarah's heart raced, the brilliant light shimmering through the air like a promise. She felt a mix of trepidation and exhilaration as she stepped closer, drawn to the glow that pierced the shadows, illuminating the dust motes swirling around them. Jacob knelt, reaching for the object, each second stretching out as if time itself held its breath. "What is it?" Sarah whispered, her voice barely rising above the racket of the storm. "I don't know yet," Jacob murmured, his fingers brushing against the smooth surface. The light pulsed gently as he lifted it, revealing a small, ornate box. Its edges were intricate, glimmering with a radiance that defied the dreary world outside. "I've never seen anything like that," Sarah breathed, dread mingling with a flicker of hope. "Could it be?" "It could be anything," Jacob said, opening the lid slowly. The hinges creaked softly, a mournful sound swallowed by the howling wind. Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, lay a small vial filled with a liquid that shimmered like sunlight filtering through the leaves of a tree. It captivated them. "What do you think it is?" Sarah asked, stepping closer, her brow furrowed in equal parts wonder and wariness. "I'm not sure," Jacob replied, peeling his gaze from the vial to meet her eyes. "But it feels significant." As another crack of thunder rattled overhead, electricity lit up the barn, and Sarah instinctively reached for Jacob's hand. The warmth of his touch grounded her amid the wildness of the moment. What if it really is something special? Something that changes everything? She ventured, her voice laced with hope that both of them were afraid to fully embrace. Or it could just be some old relic left behind by someone who lived here long ago, Jacob countered, his confidence wavering. "We can't get our hopes up over something we don't understand." "But what if?" Sarah hesitated. It was the same old fear creeping in. What if it doesn't work? What if they never get their dream? What if this is our chance? Jacob swallowed hard, wrestling with his own fears. "Do we dare to find out?" They stared at the vial, the promise of what could lie within pulling them closer. The storm outside intensified, its fury matching the tempest brewing inside their hearts. "What if it's dangerous?" Jacob warned, his eyes darting to the barn door, the howling winds beckoning them to flee. "Then at least we should do it together." She squeezed his hand tighter, the decision lingering heavily between them like the weight of the world. Nervously, Jacob picked up the vial, turning it over in his hands. It felt warm against his palm, alive with a possibility they desperately craved. "If we decide to use it, we're taking a leap of faith. We must trust it, trust ourselves." "Yes," Sarah whispered, her heart thumping wildly. "Let us believe." As Jacob uncorked the vial, the light surrounding them grew more intense, pulsing as though the very air hummed with anticipation. He hesitated, the storm outside reaching a furious crescendo, yet it felt like a moment suspended in time, where all choices weighed heavily. Neither dared to break the silence, caught in a gaze that held both determination and fear. What happens next? Sarah breathed, her eyes wide with something that felt like enlightenment mingled with uncertainty. The answer lay just beyond their grasp, a single moment filled with promise, and the mystery of choice hung palpably in the thick air. And as Jacob tipped the vial, first drops spilling forth like a secret long held, the storm seemed to quiet for a heartbeat, as if nature itself paused to witness their leap of faith. But in that instant, an unexpected thunderous crash echoed just outside the barn. What was that? Sarah gasped, heart racing anew as they both turned toward the darkened door, the chaotic world outside suddenly feeling ominous once more. What had they awakened within the storm? Would this be the answer they'd long sought, or the beginning of an even greater upheaval? The barn trembled slightly under the force of the crash. Sarah's pulse raced as she and Jacob exchanged glances, both grappling with a mixture of fear and curiosity. The room darkened momentarily, shadows focusing around them like wary spectators at a play about to begin. "Do you think we should check it out?" Jacob asked, his voice steadier than he felt. He still held the vial, droplets forming at its opening, shimmering softly against the grinding violence of the storm beyond. "I don't know." Sarah's words hung heavy in the air. "What if it's something dangerous? We could just stay here and see what happens." She tightened her grip on his hand, her knuckles pale, squeezing as if she could forge a connection strong enough to withstand whatever lay ahead. But something in Jacob's eyes darkened, a shadow of dread creeping in. "But what if it's worse? We could be sitting ducks here." As he paced toward the door, the fading light from the vial flickered, reflecting both their internal struggle and the uncertainty swirling in the air. A part of Sarah wanted to cling to the comfort of the barn, to the warmth of the magical thing they held, but another part, a deeply rooted sense of urgency, pushed her to act. She followed Jacob, her heart pounding in her chest. "What if we're meant to face whatever that is?" she asked, trying to inject hope into their fear. Jacob paused, glancing down at the vial in his hands, the once soothing light now flickering erratically. "I don't think we can ignore it. Let us take a look. We'll go together." As they edged toward the barn door, the howl of the wind combined with the echo of the crash melded into a cacophony that threatened to drown out their thoughts. They pushed the door open. The storm lay waiting, an angry breath against their faces, stinging with rain and energy. The world outside unfolded like a wild canvas, torn and frayed at its edges. "What do you see?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. Jacob squinted into the dark, trying to decipher the shroud of shadows. A fallen branch lay across the path they usually took to the fields, but it was not the branch that caught his eye. With every flash of lightning, he caught glimpses of shapes, a glimmer of something silver amongst the debris. "Over there." I think Jacob's words trailed off as the next bolt illuminated a figure staggering towards them through the downpour. Sarah gasped, her heart racing. "Who is that?" The figure grew clearer as the storm roared around them. An unfamiliar man, drenched and wild-eyed, his clothes hanging in tatters, stumbled forward. "Help!" he cried, his voice breaking like the thunder above. You have to listen. What is happening? Are you okay?" Sarah stepped forward instinctively, drawing closer to Jacob. The man clutched his arm, blood visible in the flashes of lightning. "You don't know what's coming," he shouted. "The storm, it's not what you think, it's alive. The violet can change everything, but it comes with a price." Fear gripped Sarah as she exchanged a knowing look with Jacob. They'd opened a door they hadn't meant to, and now, this man embodied the reality that their leap of faith might lead not just to answers but to unimaginable challenges. "What do you mean? What's at stake?" Jacob demanded, stepping further into the storm, trying to understand the urgency in the stranger's voice, but before the man could reply, another crash erupted nearby, louder, closer. The ground shook, and the wind screamed louder as Sarah felt the reality of their situation hitting her like a physical blow. What had they unearthed with the vial? She knew deep down, this was only the beginning. Answers lay ahead, buried within the chaos, but so did dangers they couldn't foresee. "Run!" Jacob shouted suddenly, breaking her reverie and snapping her back to the moment. The urgency in his tone propelled her into motion as they both darted back toward the barn. Behind them, the man's voice echoed one last time, mingled with the storm's fury. "It's only the start of the true storm. You can't turn back now." They fled, adrenaline coursing through them, the questions multiplying like the dark clouds above. What had they set into motion? Would they dare to face the revelations that awaited them, or would the storm consume everything they had? As they vanished into the barn's refuge, one thought remained: the secrets of the vial were far greater than they had ever imagined. But what would that mean for their future? The door slammed shut behind them, shaking with the storm's fury. The barn was a cocoon of temporary safety, but urgency hung in the air like static electricity. Sarah leaned against the door, breathless and wide-eyed. What just happened? Jacob was pacing again, his mind racing. That guy, he knows something. That storm wasn't just a storm, Sarah. We need to figure out what he meant about the vial. What if he is right? What if it's dangerous? Sarah's heart hammered in her chest, echoing her growing concern. Jacob turned to face her. We can't live in fear. We have to know what we're dealing with. And we can't ignore the price he mentioned. It could be something huge, something we can't afford to overlook. The flickering light from the vial cast eerie shadows that danced across the barn's walls, highlighting their growing panic. They could feel a tension coiling tighter, an invisible force urging them to confront the inexplicable. "Let us look at it again," Sarah suggested, narrowing her eyes at the vial as if it held the answers to their questions. She felt an insatiable pull towards it, but doubt trickled in. But if it's alive, what does that even mean? Jacob stepped forward, gripping the vial tightly in his hand. His fingers brushed over its smooth surface, feeling the pulse of something inside, an energy that vibrated softly, almost rhythmically. "Alive, I wonder if it has its own will, if it wants something from us." With a deep breath, he lifted the vial closer to the dim light. The glow pulsed like a heartbeat, illuminating his determined expression. "Whatever it is, we need to understand it. We need to embrace it." Sarah watched him, feeling both inspired and terrified. But what if it wants something we can't offer? What if it makes the storm worse? We won't know unless we try. Jacob's voice was steady, but she could see uncertainty creeping into his eyes. What if this is our chance to change everything? To stop whatever's coming? She felt a flicker of hope ignite in her chest, but it was a fragile flame. Or what if it changes us? They shared a moment of silence, hanging in the air thick with unspoken fears. What if they were not ready for the consequences? "What do you think we should do?" Jacob asked, breaking the stillness. I think Sarah hesitated. "I think we need to find a way to communicate with it. To understand what it wants. Maybe there's a reason it came into our lives." Jacob nodded slowly, and together they moved to the center of the barn, eyes fixated on the vial. The world outside raged furiously, each booming crash echoing like a warning. The barn felt claustrophobic, closing in around them. Suddenly, the vial surged with brightness, and a whisper, barely audible over the storm, flowed through their minds, a soft, melodic voice that sent chills down their spines. "Free me." What was that? Sarah whispered, her eyes darting to Jacob, who was equally stunned. "It wants to be free." "Free from what?" He pondered aloud, transformative energy igniting between them. Just then, a harsh rumble of thunder jolted them both, and the barn shuddered as though it too were alive, like the storm resided within its walls. A blast of wind slammed against the barn, causing dust to swirl in the air, and in that moment, something fluorescent erupted from the vial, a beam of light plunging through the roof. "Sarah!" Jacob shouted, as the light expanded, synchronized with their racing hearts. The world outside darkened under the eruption of energy, a new tempest brewing on the horizon to challenge what they thought they knew. What had they unleashed? Would they find the truth, or be lost in the storm's fury? The time for choices was upon them, and they had no idea how high the stakes truly were. "Let us go!" he yelled, the words barely escaping his lips as they braced for what was to come, an unseen fissure opening to a destiny unknowable. The beam of light seemed to pierce through the heavens, illuminating the barn like a spotlight in a darkened theater. Sarah's eyes widened, reflecting the sheer awe and terror of the moment. Shadows twisted and turned, the chaos outside merging with an even greater unknown inside. "Jacob!" she screamed, her voice strained. "What do we do?" Jacob stood as if frozen, his breath hitching. The brightness from the vial pulsated, casting eerie reflections on his face. "We need to step closer, it might show us what it wants." Stepping toward the light felt like stepping into the mouth of a dragon, both alluring and terrifying. The air vibrated with energy, and between them and the vial sat a force so palpable it twisted their stomachs. But beneath that fear, a strange trust blossomed. As they reached the center, the walls of the barn shuddered again, and the whisper echoed louder, curling around them like smoke. "Free me before it's too late, can you feel that?" Jacob said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's like it's trying to connect with us." "I do, but how?" Sarah reached out, her fingers trembling as they hovered just above the vial. "Maybe we just need to say something. It needs to know we're listening." Jacob's determination shone through, his fear morphing into resolve. Tentatively, Sarah found her voice. "What do you want from us?" The words hung in the air, thick with hope and dread. The light flickered, and the temperature in the barn dropped. "You seek knowledge, yet remain blind," the voice came, sweet and haunting. "To free me from this prison is to unlock a wisdom you cannot fathom." Jacob's heart raced. "Wisdom? What kind of wisdom?" "Wisdom about the storm, about life." The pulse from the vial quickened, a burst of energy coursing through the air. It danced around them, sending shivers down their spines. Suddenly, Jacob understood. The storm isn't just a storm. It's a release. It's connected to what's inside that vial. "But if we free it, what will happen to the storm?" Sarah's voice trembled. "The storm is but a reflection of choices unmade," the voice replied, each word a spark in the silent chaos. "You can change everything, but change demands sacrifice." Suddenly, the ground beneath them vibrated, a low growl rumbling like a beast awakening. "What sacrifice?" Jacob pressed, trying to grasp the weight of their decision. "Innocence, perhaps, or your past." The whisper deepened, resonating with something deeper than words. "Only you can decide what is worth keeping and what must go." Sarah felt the world shift around her. Memories washed over her, moments of her life racing in quick bloom, the laughter, the tears, the burdens she had carried. She glanced at Jacob, his expression stark with realization, battling against the weight of the choices before them. "I can't lose who I am," she gasped, stepping back. "Not for anything." "But what if losing a part of ourselves is the key to saving everything that matters?" Jacob countered, his voice heavy with conflict. The beam from the vial intensified, bathing them in light, blurring the boundaries of their reality. The barn felt alive, pulling them closer to the center of the storm brewing in their hearts. Time stretched thin, and every heartbeat echoed with the urgency of their decision. Then came the familiar rumble of thunder again, closer now. It was a reminder of what awaited them outside, a world changing rapidly without their consent. "What if freeing it means we release something worse?" Sarah whispered. Caught at the edge of two destinies, they both knew this was a moment that would define them forever. But there was still a chance to pull back. "What will it be?" Jacob asked, his eyes searching hers. "Will we risk everything for knowledge?" Just as she opened her mouth to respond, the barn shook violently. And then, without warning, the storm outside unleashed its fury, a tempest born of their hesitation. "No!" Sarah cried out, instinctively reaching for Jacob. But the light continued to pulse, and the decision hung in the air like the calm before the storm. Would they dare to unveil the truth? Or would they turn back, sealing their fates in the darkness? As they braced for the outcome, the storm roared louder. And with it, the choice lay before them, a choice that could change their lives forever. The temperature dropped further, like an ominous wave crashing over them. Sarah's heart raced, pounding against her ribcage. Each crack of thunder outside felt like a countdown, an impending doom drawing nearer. She could see the anxious swirl in Jacob's eyes, and suddenly she felt a surge of clarity. "Jacob," she said, her voice steadying just enough. "If we choose to free it, we need to be ready for whatever comes next, whatever it can unleash." "I know," he replied, gnawing on his lip as he looked toward the pulsating light. "But it might be worth it. What if we could change everything?" The barn creaked under the mounting pressure of the storm, as if it too was weighing their choices. Lightning flashed through the cracks, momentarily illuminating the hundreds of memories that filled the old wooden beams. Each echo of thunder shook not just the structure around them but the very foundations of their lives. "Sarah, think, what do we truly want?" Jacob urged, stepping closer to the vial, drawn by a force greater than fear. "We can either live in this fear forever or be brave enough to face the unknown. Are we ready for the unknown?" Sarah pondered aloud, her mind racing with possibilities. She thought of her childhood dreams, of the safe life she had built on the farm, and wondered if it could all vanish with one decision. The weight of her past settled heavily on her shoulders. But she also thought of the future, of what was at stake, not just for them, but for everyone caught in the storm's path. A gust of wind howled, causing the barn doors to rattle, almost as if urging them forward. "Every day we wait, the storm gets worse," Jacob added, his voice breaking through her spiral of thoughts. "What if it's not just about us? What if we can help others too?" "Help others," she echoed, feeling the flutter of hope touch her heart. She looked deep into Jacob's eyes, searching for reassurance, and found a fierce determination reflected back at her. The kind that sparked courage in her own soul. They were intertwined in this battle, connected through every fear and every dream. "What if we don't come back from it?" she asked, her voice almost a whisper. The air thickened around them as though the barn itself was holding its breath, waiting for their answer. "Then at least we tried," Jacob said, a fierce conviction building in his tone. "We owe it to ourselves. We owe it to the world." His words wrapped around her like a warm blanket that pushed through her cold doubts. Sarah took a deep breath, feeling the weight of her past tugging at her, yet a strange lightness lifted her spirit. If they were going to do this, they would do it together, whatever the cost. Slowly, with trembling fingers, she reached toward the light. It shimmered, almost inviting, as if it were aware of their shared resolve. "I choose knowledge," she declared, feeling the warmth surge through her again. "I choose to look beyond fear." As Sarah's hand made contact with the vial, a surge of energy erupted around them, striking like a shockwave. The barn shook violently as reality splintered apart, shadows twisted and danced, colors distorted, and for a fleeting moment, she saw flashes of everything that could be a world transformed. "Hold on!" Jacob cried, grabbing her hand tightly. A rippling sound flooded the air, and she prayed they wouldn't lose everything in this reckless choice. The storm howled outside, a cacophony of chaos reflecting their own minds. But then came the calm, a strange silence hovering around their figures like a protective cocoon. In that moment of vulnerability, a question erupted within her. What would they find when the light faded? What new truths waited for them, shrouded in the storm? And just like that, the atmosphere shifted. The light blazed brighter, pulling them both into its swirling depths, as the walls of the barn began to dissolve, and the world outside roared to life. But did they truly have the courage to confront what lurked in the truth? Would it lead to salvation, or perhaps an even darker fate? As the light engulfed Jacob and Sarah, the barn vanished around them. They found themselves suspended in a brilliant void, neither here nor there, a space where time and reality blended like colors in an artist's palette. There were echoes of laughter, sobs of longing, and in between, the sweet sound of children playing. It surrounded them, washing over their senses and filling the emptiness that had long haunted their hearts. "Where are we?" Sarah whispered, her voice trembling in the surrounding brilliance. "It feels like a dream," Jacob murmured, bewildered yet entranced. From the pulsating glow, a figure began to emerge, a woman, radiating warmth and light, her presence both calming and powerful. She smiled tenderly, her eyes filled with endless wisdom. "You sought knowledge, and in doing so, you invited the storm. Who are you?" Jacob asked, awe flooding his voice. "I am the keeper of this realm, the balance of hope and despair," she replied, her voice a soft murmur woven with the rhythms of nature. "Your choice has brought you closer to the truth you seek. But you must understand, every choice has its price." "What price?" Sarah pressed, her heart racing with anticipation and fear. "To confront your greatest fears, to unravel the layers of despair you've both carried. Watch closely." With a gentle wave of her hand, the surroundings shifted again. The vision unfolded like a storybook, and they stood beside the fields of corn of their memories, but now alive with children laughing, running, and playing. Their laughter echoed in the wind, a sweet harmony that reverberated through their hearts like a long-lost melody. "Is this what could be?" Jacob asked, tears pricking the corners of his eyes. The woman nodded. "Every decision in this moment can alter their fates, as well as your own. But, you cannot cling to your past if you want to nurture this future." Suddenly, the scene shifted again, the joyful laughter replaced with haunting reminders of their struggles, conversations filled with doubts, moments of heartbreak, and the weight of disappointment pressing down on them, a storm brewing anew. "See the choice, despair or hope," she urged, her voice echoing with sincerity. "One path extends into a cycle of sorrow. The other embraces courage, the desire to push through the storm." "Will it hurt?" Sarah whispered, squeezing Jacob's hand tightly. "The birth of new beginnings often comes with sacrifices. You must shed what no longer serves you," the woman explained, her gaze holding their fear in place, yet offering the tiniest glimmer of assurance. As they watched the visions, Jacob's heart swelled. "What if we say goodbye to the fear of losing ourselves? What if we choose to release the pain? Each choice brings new life, but it also requires letting go. The scars of your past must be released to break the cycle." "I want to try," Jacob declared, feeling the heat of determination flooding his veins. "Whatever price it is." Sarah nodded, feeling a budding strength. "Together. In unity, there lies power," the keeper affirmed, a smile dancing on her lips. "Embrace your truth, and let it illuminate your path." With their hearts aligned, they closed their eyes, taking a breath that seemed to echo in eternity. Their minds danced back through the labyrinth of memories, the moments of fear and joy weaving seamlessly together. They felt the pain, the loss, and the burden of expectations release, floating free into the cosmos, each echo dissipating into light, and then, as they surrendered, the brilliance surrounding them intensified, radiant with every moment of hope they dared to clutch tightly, igniting a brilliant wave of energy. "Open your eyes," the keeper whispered, her voice wrapping around their spirits like the tender embrace of dawn. As they blinked their eyes open, the world had transformed. They stood once again among the cornfields, but this time, they were no longer alone. Behind them, their community gathered, faces filled with warmth, love, and shared hopes that intertwined with their desires. Jacob and Sarah turned to each other, radiant smiles illuminating their faces. The storm had subsided, the sun painted its golden hue across the landscape, transforming the fields into an ocean of light. It was not just their rebirth but the birth of a new dream, a community that had rallied around their vulnerability. "Told you the storm had something hidden," Jacob teased gently, wiping a tear of joy from his cheek. "Here's to new beginnings." Together, Sarah whispered, her heart soaring, their hands intertwined, they stepped forward into the light, ready to face whatever came next together. From that day onward, they carried the memories of their journey and shared it with anyone who would listen, building a community of hope that radiated with life. Each time a child's laughter broke through the air, it wasn't just a reminder of their dreams fulfilled, it was a testament to their courage, sacrifice, and the beauty of discovery amidst the storms of life. As they stood together, surrounded by friends, the stirring winds carried a song of promise, a promise of love, family, and community. Jacob and Sarah had found what they had always yearned for, and now the world felt alive again. Now, this is your moment to not just reflect on the magic you've witnessed but to be part of it. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show you're part of this journey with us. Comment below your reactions and feelings about this ending, because we want to hear your voice. And for those who need to feel this transformation in their own lives, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this magic unfold. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait not even one more second to share. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.